I have no problem drilling a hole into it. I'm like Dr. Mengele of DeLoreans. We have a pile of parts that are getting ready to go on the car. Car is kind of in production. We're putting this back window. The car has to be completely waterproof. So in the real movie car, in the screen use car, you know, the way the thing was designed was there was a portion of the bulkhead that went here, and then it went inwards in a Z fashion, and this whole back area would naturally be wide open, right? So water would just like come in. Hey, check it out. It's Fry.
What's up?
Fry from Screen Machines, little reunion from our TV show.
They called me back. What can I say? It's hard to say no if the price is right.
So yeah, we brought in all the pros. All right, so this is before we got all this put together. These are some custom headlights that we made that have a LED light in there so that it just has a nice warm glow, and you'll see that later in the video, or maybe you've seen it already. Everything's powered from an AC to DC converter that is going in the car. The car's going to run completely off of AC. This will create 13 volts DC at 55 amps, so this thing will run the thing, and it's going to be pretty amazing. We've tried to rust proof underneath the car as much as possible. So I know the skeleton we're looking at right now looks pretty rough, but this is at some of the beginning stages, and when we're done with all this, well, you already know what it looks like, because, you know, this is an amplifier that, you know, from like the 70s or 80s, whatever. And you rip the thing apart, and then you get like these heat sinks out of here. And like this is just a heat sink that sits on the back of the car. It's not necessarily a big giant secret. I mean, I guess it is for the people that don't know, but these are the kind of things we have to do. So like, for instance, just to get that heat sink, I had to completely buy this amp for a couple $100 and just throw it in the trash just to get that heat sink. This is a part that you see on the back of the car. Now, the original part was actually a heating element out of an old Xerox machine. Those machines have all been recycled and you just can't find them. So we kind of have to build this completely from scratch. So based on the measurements of the original, these are laser cut for us. And then these pipes are hand bent and wired up to look like the real thing. And it's just all part of the replication process. This is a cool example of one of those things that you just can't get anymore. It's just a blower motor. Can't find them anymore, but so we replicated out of plastic, you know. And this is just one of many parts. Basically, everything on the car kind of has to be done that way in order to get it to work. So what we're making right now, there's capacitors all over the car. These are high voltage capacitors. So like, you know, on one side you've got these blue ones. They're actually silver wrapped in a translucent blue, and that was just to indicate the type of you know, capacitor it was. The ones that are on the other side are red, but they don't make a red capacitor. And when we were trying to figure out what these things were over the years, we could never find this capacitor because the one on the car had 3 conductors on it, which normally a capacitor has 2. We couldn't figure out what it was, but what the guys did, what Kevin Pike and his team did, is they took a capacitor, flipped it upside down, and put 3 solder studs on it, and made it look like some sort of electronic device. But in order to get it to fit properly, what they had to do is they had to cut off about 1 inch of the thing and empty it out. Now, inside a capacitor is this rolled paper coil, you know, filled with a material. So we have to. It's held in place with a hot glue. So in order to empty this thing out, you got to get it real hot and boiling. And we're just dumping the glue into a box, the contents. This is one of those don't try this at home kids. I've been doing this for a long time. Using a torch. It is a little bit of a fire hazard, so make sure you have a fire extinguisher handy when you're not doing this at home. I'm not doing it at home. I'm doing it in a shop with proper ventilation. All right, so now what we got is the hot glue is starting to boil. You can see that. You can get a good shot of that. And we don't want it to catch on fire. Hold on. Try not to breathe these fumes, by the way. It might be hot enough. So I'm using this oil filter wrench. You have to do it delicately because you don't want to scar the canister. And then we're just going to dump it out. There we go. And there's the inside of just, this is a deep drawn metal enclosure of aluminum. I'm running out of space in my junk pile. So yeah, you know, the problem that we had trying to find some of this stuff was the fact that we were looking for things that didn't exist. We didn't realize that, you know, like there's a green bottle, or actually there's a red bottle that's in the back of the car. And I remember back when we were looking everywhere, we were looking for a red bottle. But really, it's an oxygen bottle that's worn by pilots. So when they eject out of a plane, they have oxygen when they're above atmosphere. And so we're looking for a red one. Well, little do we know, it was just a green one. They painted red. So sometimes when you're trying to replicate props, you have to pay attention to the shape and not the color. Because usually, these guys, they'll just take, you know, something, they'll paint it another color. So these were normally blue, and they made them red. Why? Because red is interesting. It's an interesting color. That's why I wear it. What's going to happen is we're not going to paint them just red. They're going to be done in an anodized red. Look at that. Perfect. And I can heat this up a little more. And I just realized I made a mistake. And I forgot to take off this little sticker on the bottom. That's going to be a problem. Yeah. This is what it takes to build a time machine. So one of the cool things we did with this build is we found these vintage Goodyear white letter Eagle GTs, just like that were on the original screen use car. The tread pattern is very similar to the original DeLorean NCT pattern. These are pretty hard to get. They've been out of production for a long time. Wouldn't recommend driving on them, but these are going to be used just for display. Weird thing about the DeLorean is you have 15-inch rears and then 14-inch fronts that are staggered. These ones are actually a GT4, which is a slightly different version. You want the wrench? Or you're gonna just do it all at once?
This one, get it.
They don't really need to be super torqued because, like I said, they're not gonna drive anywhere. So.
Yeah.
It's like a DeLorean Time Machine pit crew. So we're getting some electrical stuff done in here. It's kind of messy right now, but you know, we have the MP3 player, the amplifier, all running through this fuse box, through this power supply. That's our AC power over there, and we're going to show that off in a minute. What's cool is happening is we've got this fan that we put where the radio and stuff used to be. This is a 12-volt fan, high flow, and that's going to suck air not only from the trunk area, but through the cabin, blow it through here. Heat's going to rise naturally. There's an air gap that runs along the top here, and then this fan in the very rear is going to suck the air out of the cabin and just blow it back here. We've designed it so that the fan and the speakers can be accessed from the rear, so that if they ever need to be replaced, they can be done just from under the car or lifting up the rear. And that'll keep the car cool, also get rid of the moisture. And these are computer industrial fans that are made to run in power supplies for 5-10 years, so I would imagine they're going to last a good 5 or 10 years before they fail. We'll find out. These are the crazy kind of things that we're working on. So we've been trying to figure out for a while now which radio is in the car. Now, the one that's in the A car at the Peterson Museum that was restored by the Time Machine restoration guys, well, this is apparently the radio that was in there. Found this one, new old stock, originally $49.99. I was looking at the box, and I noticed this thing was made in Compton, California. This radio is straight out of Compton. Yeah, man. So what we're going to do is, like they did in the movie, they didn't want this to stick out too much. So we're going to remove this face. We're going to spray paint this thing black, and then it's going to be mounted on top of the time circuits. Now, I had another radio on the time circuits that was similar to this one, but not quite the right one. This is the same one that's in the A car. So this is the one that's going on the car. Now, these aren't cheap. You can find them, but to find one new old stock in the box like that, you could expect to pay $400 or $500. But we're not going to spare any expenses on this car. And I'm going to put in my Craco radio straight out of Compton, yo. It's hard. It's a little dark.
And I was going over that really dark stuff.
This is supposed to be, you know, the closest thing to the original factory. The original factory was a water-based unit.
Really? Back then?
Yeah, it was water-based, and so they don't manufacture this type of paint anymore. So this is the closest calculation.
See how that comes out.
I would catch a little of this corner
dial it
there.
back a little bit, because it's.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think you got a little heavy fluid or not enough air.
Is it orange peeling?
It's just not breaking up all that great. But
It's with the level of metallic in it. It's hard to get it to lay quite right.
so that's what I was saying earlier about the pressure. I have to turn it way the fuck up to get it to not do that.
There's a lot of metal flake in it. It's real.
I think that's a little better. That's a lot better.
Yeah.
We don't need no sticker paint booth.
Alright guys, so I'm gonna go home.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the help.
Yep.
This engine has so many angles, man. I think I'm pretty happy with that for this coat. Alright, back to the front. Back to the front! You will paint when I say you must paint! Back to the
Back to
front.
the front. The rare purple clamps. What makes the purple clamp special is that they're aerospace grade, and to save weight, you know, they've removed that little section. Now, when you have hundreds or maybe thousands of these clamps all over an airplane, that little piece of metal adds up to pounds, which you want to shave. These are very, very light. And, well, they're just hard to get. I think these are 12, 15 bucks a piece. So we don't generally use these on our replica cars, just because if we did everything the way like this car is being, you just couldn't afford to buy one. I mean, you could, but you'd have to be like rich, and we wouldn't be able to make very many of them. So we make those kind of substitutions, like these are the actual clamps, but we don't usually use those on our replicas just because they're so hard to get, they're so rare, they're so expensive, and there's so much more you could do with an extra grand or whatever. And it's like, do you really care about those things? But on this car, because it's kind of a replica, you know, of the real thing, and we want it to really, really be more than just a car that you would enjoy as a fan replica, but as something, a museum quality. Anyway, so that's explanation of some of the clamps. And you realize why they are where they are, because you can only access, you know, certain little sections. So something that kind of helps us figure out where stuff goes, aside from the photos that we use, is, well, can you get to that part? You know, I have to be able to put a machine screw through here with a nut on the back. There's only one little piece right there that can happen. So that's how I know. I remember the first time, about 2004, I drilled into my DeLorean, and I was sweating bullets. But now, oh, I walked a little. Oh. I have no problem. I have no problem drilling a hole into it. I'm like Dr. Mengele of DeLoreans. Just go right in there. Oh yeah. That bothered me a bit. So now we've taken our 1032 machine screw, stainless steel, and my clamp. This is a 3/4 inch clamp, stainless screw. This is difficult for men with meaty fingers like myself. This would be way easier with the wheel off. Okay, I talked a big game. Now I gotta see. This is this is the hard part. They put these little things here. The edges of these DeLorean panels are like razor sharp. Like the T panel that comes off, I call that the razor blade, because working under that thing, it's like you got to wear gloves, or else it will just slice you to itty bitty pieces. This is why it takes so long, because trying to get to these little spots. All right, there it is. Okay, this is what I need to do. Use this as leverage. There we go. And then we go through using really detailed photos, and we zip tie this. This ends up going into this pipe down below. Now, theoretically, in reality, this would go all the way through. But for our purposes, it's just there for looks. So all of this cable is just here for decoration. I'm going to put a zip tie on the end of this just to make it thread easier. This reminds me of my wedding night. I couldn't get it all in. I had to pull it back and trim it. So, you know, we'll go through our reference pictures and try to orientate the wire to be in the same way it was. And then we have these really detailed pictures of where every little zip tie is, the direction it's facing, the color of the zip tie. And that's what we've done on this whole car, every little rivet. And even sometimes, like for instance, the spacing of these is just a little tad wonky. But it actually is like that in the original photo. We looked at it and we're like, you know, because whoever was doing it at the time, probably Mike Chaffee or you know, one of Kevin Pike's guys, Lantieri, whoever it was, you know, that They weren't sitting here with a square and marking up. They were just like drill a hole, put a thing in. They had to build, what, 3 cars in 10 weeks with like a couple of guys. I know the feeling, and we're doing it right now. We're literally at the last minute. We have to get this car done by tomorrow. It is going on 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm still here working because we got to get it done. It's a real vintage gauge off of like a radiation machine. So you back that up with a little bit of super glue, because the self-sticky, we're using vintage tape from like the 70s so that it's the correct, when I say tape, I'm talking about this embossed, what do they call that thing? Dymo label.
Dymo labels.
Yeah. So we found some vintage new old stock stuff, and but the sticky on it starts to fail after a while, so we use glue so that makes sure it sticks. And then you got the authentic plutonium chamber made out of metal, and the vintage real gauges. Let's get them in the car.
One more sticker.
It's like literally the day I'm supposed to leave today. Gonna leave tomorrow, I guess. Still getting things tightened down. Getting all these little wiring things done. What takes time, it's just a pain, is doing like all these little wiring terminals, you know? You have to do each and every one of those. And it's just like miles and miles of wire. Right, Omar? Isn't it fun? Look at this. This wire. I spent thousands of dollars. Like this stuff here, I think it's about $3 a foot. Like high voltage stuff. Still have to get all this finished wiring. It looks like a mess right now. We're doing like a little burn-in test on the headlights and flux bands. We have these reference photos. These are photos I took of the screen-used A car at the Peterson. And so we'll go through here and use that as a reference, and then get every single little wire. It's a pain in the ass. It's looking good. Looks great. That's awesome. I mean, looking at the picture right there, it's crazy. It's really good. Really happy with the way this thing came out over here. I just got through doing this a little bit ago. It's a lot of work. Wormhole emitter looking good. Well, it was previously the wormhole emitter. Bob Gale has changed the name of that to the tachyon field generator. It's a direct casting off of the A car. Got from Joe Wilson, who was on the team. I also got castings of these flux boxes that were on the A car from him, as well as these orange tubes. They come off an old Sikorsky helicopter. So I got a couple of cool things from him, and Terry Metalis from the Time Machine Restoration team. You know, most of this stuff is real found parts. You know, these are genuine capacitors, zero Halliburton enclosure cats. For our plutonium gauges, you know, as we showed previously, these are all real parts. We usually use replicas of those. But, you know, this is metal. This is metal. It's all real metal. Those are the real parts, the real little counter. And so upper console in. It's coming together really well. This little counter, this is the real thing. It's an actual functioning part. We can make it say whatever we want. Just for fun, we'll put it on 420. What do you think? See who notices. Yeah, that mask is kind of crappy. Fuck this.
Is anybody waiting on a sandwich?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Sandwich.
Don't touch my meatball sandwich. That's mine.
Don't touch my meatballs.
Hands off my meatballs.
Don't touch the trim. If it's not too small.
This is way easier to work on with no engine.
Removing every engine.
I still say we should convert them to electric.
I'm fat. I'm old. Okay. Your language. Kids are watching.
Okay.
Well, it needs to go quite a bit more.
Yeah, lift it up on their side.
What's blocking now? Just wires?
Yeah, these are kind of...
I can set it down on my side.
My Schwartz is tangled. All right, hey. All right, now let me see if I can lift it. I don't really have there's not a finger hole anymore. Oh, here, you're gonna get it here.
Grab an oil separator. That's on there pretty tight.
Yeah, but hey, I don't have any power to lift here. The mechanism.
Go right there where the hinge goes.
No, there's not. I don't have a finger hole anymore.
Oh.
Like if I can step my finger in there, as soon as it moves, it's gonna crush my finger.
Well, we got to go.
I have trouble.
We got at least another inch forward to go.
Do you have a box I'm gonna stand on? I can't. I don't have the arm strength to reach out and lift straight up.
Grab a oil separator.
We're good.
Okay, grab the oil separator.
We're good over here.
Well, it's hitting the back of this thing just a
Here,
tad.
trade places with me. I'll get that side.
You just got to get this up over the lip.
Just wiggle it just a little bit.
Get jiggy with it.
There we go.
Let's see that. Yeah, that thing flips, goes up over.
We're good over here.
It seems like it needs to go like just a.
Hey,
here.
you gotta have to move that puck up.
No, it's not hitting anything.
It's touching the orange thing.
It isn't even touching. It's not. I'm looking at it.
This?
Yeah, it's not doing anything.
It's. But I'm saying is, you should leave that there.
And then we'll figure out. There's these other hoses. Or not hoses, these wires. You're gonna have to be trimmed down quite a bit. But these go off into that hole and that hole. So we got to trim these down. That's going to require a pretty large, significant cutter.
Yeah.
Well, here it is. It's done. We're about to load it up. It's about to go on the trailer, and it looks amazing. We did this as a replica of the A car, which is currently at the Peterson Museum. The A car is basically, I don't know, dare I say, a replica of itself, because they had to build it from the ground up. So we used it as the gold standard of what to follow. And we tried to faithfully do with the materials that we had and the parts we had. I mean, I know there's things people will point out, like this isn't the correct hose, well, we just couldn't get that part, you know. And we had to do with what we had in the short time period we had. We only had a couple of weeks to build this car. So I know that some of the eagle-eyed Professionals out there will notice certain little things, but we did the best with what we had, with the amount of time that we had on the budget we had. We didn't have a year. We didn't have 20 guys to help. We had a couple of weeks and a couple of guys. I think we did a great job, and I think this car is going to do well. All right, let's look under the trunk, and this is where the business end is. AC power is going to come from through the bottom of the car, wired in through these liquid tight connectors, and it's going to power this AC timer. This can be manual operated, but it's going to operate to automatically turn on and off during the hours. This comes on and powers that AC to DC converter, which then in turn runs that fuse block, which powers the amplifier and the sound effects module that you're hearing now. It also powers this little DC timer, and this DC timer will operate the headlights, taillights, and the flux bands at dusk hours. It could be set to any time or operated manually. We also have power running to the inside of the car, which is powering everything that's inside here. And everything is powered through the one main switch, just like in the movie. But unlike some of our other replicas, this stuff doesn't necessarily work. The time circuits can be set to any time. The speedometer is static. The plutonium gauges are static. The flux capacitor does its one thing. The spectrum analyzer SID display, it does its thing like it does in the movie. You have the upper console here, made out of all real parts. You have a real, Grimes light up there, which is actually on and illuminating the interior. These are all the, correct labeling and everything. And the cool thing about this is all of this stuff works. You can turn these different things on and off. There's a lot of attention to detail there. We'll run around to the back side on the other side here. This is a real Röntgen plutonium gauge. We put LEDs in there that are super bright because we want to be able to see it in the daytime. But these are all real gauges from vintage parts. That's from an old, radiation meter. It's genuine. As is all of these parts. These are all real. This is all genuine stuff, real metal. This all lights up for real. Here we have the rest of the interior. You can hear the cooling fans inside. You have a cooling fan that's cooling off the time circuits and blowing through this area, cooling all of this. And then you have the exhaust fans in the back. You can feel the air being sucked through this rear bulkhead. This amplifier basically runs the speaker system that you're hearing now. And this sound effects module is basically made for an on-hold phone system. It's made to run 24 hours a day for decades. And so this thing automatically comes on and plays the sound that's been loaded into it, which is something that I edited together of music effects or sound effects from the movie. Very simple fuse block. These are lighted LEDs, meaning that, fuses, meaning that when one pops, it will light up so that you know that it's bad. So pretty unique thing there. These headlights, we put some very simple LED bulbs in here, and as well as here, this is all LED lighting. We wanted them to look kind of dim and not like real headlights, so that you can just see that the headlights are on, but they're not really showing anything. Like a car that's sitting there with an almost dead battery, just like in the movie. These flux boxes, as they're known, these are genuine old plugs. These are the real thing. I think we've nailed the color on this. These are castings from the real flux boxes I got from Joe Walser that are on the A car. I know that this isn't the exact right liquid tight nipple. We're going to replace those later. But we did get the correct purple clamps and machine head screws. I think we did a good job of that. The metal boxes that are on the dash, I think we did really faithfully. These are probably the best ones we've ever done. You can look inside there. You can see that we've gotten the parts that go inside there. Pretty decent job on those. Spent a lot of time on these red capacitors. These are real metal capacitors that have been emptied out, turned upside down, affixed to these metal plates, painted with a clear type of red. And this isn't the exact type of solder connection, but it worked for now. I don't know if they ever identified what these things are, but we did use real metal where we could. We had to change some things about the rear bulkhead to make it waterproof. Up top we have a real Krups 223 coffee grinder, Mr. Fusion. All of this stuff is metal. It's not a casting, metal. That's a real thing if we were to recreate this car, which we couldn't. So don't even bother asking me to recreate this car because we just can't do it. This car is the culmination of 15 years of scavenging and parts. All the stuff that went into this car is the stuff that I've been hiding on a shelf now for all of these years. I mean, inside this flux, as I showed earlier, those are real glass and brass relays. Those are the real relays. That's the real thing. I mean, that thing is glorious. So this is all real parts, real vintage parts, stuff that's just really impossible to get. Somebody gonna come so let the brake off. Go straight. Straight. Turn left, needle. Left. Whoa. Okay. All right, roll forward. Put up the brake. All right, now turn the wheels that way. All right, straight. Okay. That might bend. That's why I was trying to get it. Push it from back there. Go forward. Okay, turn the wheels that way. All right, start with it. Stop. Okay, right. Make sure that's winding properly. And it's settled in. Let's go, switch out. Okay, it's okay. Okay, straight. Hey, Rick, let that lock down. Wait, stop. Okay, keep it straight. Get out of there, Omar. Don't stand in front of the table. Hey, you need me this way a little bit more. We're okay on this side. We got about this much over here. Yeah, they'll need more pressure in the door over there. Shit, what is that? Oh, the car's tilted, so it's letting the green juice out of the pipe. I didn't know there was any left in there. You won't know until you turn the car upside down. Go. Subtle. Keep going all the way to the yellow block. Hey, can you hit these cones? Move them. I'm fucking working on it. There's shit blocking the shit. You're gonna hit the cone. What's a cone? Moving! Try not to lay down. You like Johnny Carson? I mean, you know, talk. Man, I'm fat. Yep. All right. Fat Joe. I gotta look him up. Yeah. We got the bus loaded, got the trailer loaded, we're filling up at the local Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is well, it's the world's largest gas station, only here in Texas. They have them all through all around Texas. It's an experience. We're going to Buc-ee's. So this is the Videobob tour bus. This is how we roll. Thing holds 250 gallons of fuel. So it takes a lot to keep this thing going. Yeah, you ever see a gas station this big? This is Texas, so for those of you watching from around the world, Buc-ee's is it's a phenomenon. They have like fans. People are crazy about this place, and they sell all kinds of custom food that they make themselves. They have a full deli, barbecue sandwiches. They sell camping gear. I mean, it's like the size of a Walmart or a major grocery store, and it's a gas station. Look at this. Hundreds of fuel pumps, and they're all busy filling up with fuel, and they have about the cheapest fuel around. And everybody comes to take a picture with Buc-ee the beaver. Look at that. Yeah, you've never seen a gas station like this before, I assure you. Ridiculous. It's crazy. Look at this. This is a gas station. How is this a gas station?